guys, I'm Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
And we're those film flamers.
And last week, we took a deep dive into what many might consider to be a classic modern zombie movie with Wreck.
Yeah, and one of the best found footage films ever made, and possibilities.
I mean, subjectivity abound, but still, we think so. And this week, we watched Wreck 2.
So we will be giving you a derp dive into what is the sequel for one of the best found footage films.
This certainly is a sequel. Wreck 2 is a 2009 Spanish found footage zombie film sequel to 2007's Wreck, as we just said, and the second installment in the Wreck film series. The film was written and directed by Jaume Balagueró and Paco Plaza, both of whom returned from the previous film. The story takes place immediately after the events of the first and follows a team of soldiers assigned to protect a scientist supposedly sent to investigate the cause of the outbreak, but who already may know more about it than he claims.
The film stars Jonathan Meller, Oscar Sanchez-Zafra, and Ariel Casas, with Manuela Velasco and Javier Botet reprising their roles from the original film. Several other cast members also returned for the sequel, mostly appearing as infected versions of their previous characters.
Okay, listeners. Tranquilo. Calmate. This is Wreck 2.
The fuck was that?
The most spoken lines in that film. Tranquilo. Tranquilo. Calmate. You? No one listens, though. They never calmate.
When what was supposed to be an easy filming of firefighters rescuing a elderly woman becomes a zombified outbreak event, an apartment building is quarantined, but the outside world has no idea what the hell is going on inside. So naturally, a team equipped with cameras and guns are sent inside to get to the bottom of things. The team consists of Dr. Owen, played by Jonathan Meller, an official from the Ministry of Health, and 4 SWAT members, Fernandez, Martos, Rosso, and Lara, all of which seem to be very good at shouting and not being very equipped to handle these situations at all. All seems quiet as they enter the building, so they make their way up to the penthouse of experiments and begin to document all of the crazy documents and newspaper clippings surrounding the Mcginnis girl and her possession. When they investigate a disturbance below, they are attacked by infected residents. Martos is infected, but Dr. Owen uses a rosary and some religious chanting to subdue and secure him in a room. This seems odd to the remaining shouty SWATmen, and they rip at his collar to reveal that he's a priest. That's right, it's actually Father Dr. Owen. The possession story is real. He has been sent into the building to get a blood sample from the Mcginnis girl to continue the work of the previous Father Doctor. But where the hell is she? They return to the penthouse to find that infected children can travel through air ducts. They also find the body of the original Father Doctor and the much sought-after blood sample, but they break it, because clearly everyone involved is a professional. They're attacked again, probably because they can't stop shouting, and Laura, cornered, commits suicide. Meanwhile, a group of stupid teens are dead set on filming something cool tonight. They tried sending a sex doll flying with fireworks, but that was a dud. Instead, they decided to follow a fireman and a father, but not a Father Doctor, into the building to see what's up. A father is simply trying to get some medicine to his sick daughter, who, of course, spoiler alert, is already fucking dead, inside, and the fireman wants to find his missing buddies. The teens, they have no reason, they're just stupid. The police outside seal their exit, and they're trapped. But luckily, they find a gun. They both reach for the gun.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes?
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Oh, yes, they both.
Reach for the gun?
The gun.
Father Dr. Owen and his SWATmen meet up with the group, and the father is attacked and infected. The fireman is accidentally killed by one of the teens, while another, Tito, is bitten and infected. Reporter Angela, played by Manuela Velasco, shows up, shaken but stirred, and has a camera with which to continue filming, or maybe find something magical. But first, an interview. They tape young Tito to a chair, and since he's actually possessed, not infected, they decide to get some answers from him. But demons are cryptic at best, and he sort of tells them that Mcginnis is upstairs in the penthouse, naturally, so they head on back up. Father Dr. Owen remembers the recurring biblical theme of darkness versus light on the way and thinks he may be onto something. Is this thing evil? Using the trusty infrared function on Angela's camera, they find that things are magically hidden in the darkness, such as the door, the scary door, which they enter in the name of religious science, because their father doctor is there. They're attacked by Mcginnis, who kills Fernandez. She begins a kerfuffle with Father Dr. Owen, but Angela blows her head off with a shotgun. Father Dr. Owen is outraged because he needed that goddamn blood sample, but Dios mío! Angela is actually possessed and attacks Father Dr. Owen and kills Rosso. She has a little conversation with the good Father Doctor and then kills him. She imitates his voice to alert the authorities outside that she alone would be exiting, as everyone else is either dead or infected. But wait, there's more. Flashbacks are a handy device when something needs to be wrapped up, so we get to see more of the tape from Angela's original journey through the apartment building of Jaume. When she was dragged away by Mcginnis, Angela was given the gift of a slimy worm, presumably containing the possession or infection, when Mcginnis vomited it into her mouth during the world's worst French kiss. Now, identifying as a possessed individual, Angela hears the SWATmen enter the building and goes into hiding, biding her time until she needs to reveal herself to them. Want to know more of this story? Well, you're going to have to wait until the fourth movie.
The end. Rec 2 premiered at the 66th Venice in Venice.
It's not in Barcelona.
Rec 2 premiered at the 66th Venice International Film Festival out of competition. It was also shown at the Midnight Madness portion of the 2009 Toronto International Film Festival, as well as Fantastic Fest in Austin. It went on general release in Spain the first weekend of October, going to number 1 at the Spanish box office and achieving the best opening weekend of the year for a Spanish film.
Rec 2 has a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes, with an audience score sitting at 60%. Unfathomably. The site's consensus reads, quote, "It lacks the surprising jolt of the first installment, but Rec 2 almost maintains the original's chilling momentum and proves not all horror sequels were made equal."
That is accurate. They are not all made equal.
No.
As evidenced by this. Reviewing the film in the New York Times, Jeanette Katsoulis praised the sound design and the directing, but criticized the sequel's lack of terror found in the original film, and its anti-Catholic sentiment and repetitive staging.
I don't
think it was anti-Catholic.
No.
It was repetitive in its staging, though. It's like,
It was.
Let's leave the penthouse. Go back to the penthouse. Oh, wait, the demon says she's actually in the penthouse after all. Let's
Which was
go back.
a plot hole. Anyway, Little White Lies gave the film 4 out of 5 and called it the greatest zombie sequel since Dawn of the Dead. Empire also awarded the film 4 stars, saying, "Here's a horror juddering with such in-your-face malevolent energy, it's like being caught in a first-person shooter possessed by the devil."
Stop. However, the Daily Mirror awarded the film 2 stars, and reviewer David Edwards stated it was a bit of a wreck, spelled W-R-E-C-K. Okay. Anywho, that was a visual thing.
Yes. It does have what was nominated, I guess. Yeah, so it was nominated for Best Visual Effects at the Goya Awards, which I understandably.
Yes. And that's the Spanish equivalent to the Oscars. And at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, it was nominated for Best Limited or Direct-to-Video Release, which it lost to The Human Centipede. Okay. And it was nominated for Best Screenplay, but it lost to Black Swan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have actually a big cast, right? And there was like lots more extras in this just because of that. We had an outside scene. So it's like hundreds of extras were in this one compared to the original. But really we only have like 3 notables, right? And that's Jonathan Miller as Father Dr. Owen. This guy looks like a cross between Carl Strucken and Bill Nighy, and that's not great.
Yeah, it's really not. Like, at first when we were watching this, I was like, he kind of looks like Giles, you know?
Yeah. And I was like, Giles.
And then, Giles. But I don't know. Yeah, the more the movie starts to move on, he does look a lot like Carl Strucken. And so I was just like, oh my God, it's like Giles combined with Lurch.
Yeah. He's also actually British.
Oh, well, you can kind of tell by his accent.
I can't.
Well, I mean, I didn't like stop and ponder his Britishness, but he has a different accent than some of the other people in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, he did a good job, and he's compelling to look at for better or worse. Manuela Velasco returns, obviously, and then Javier Botet returns as, straight up right out of the first film.
Yeah.
Like perfect. Everything. I do have to say that this whole movie does really, really well with making things look exactly like the first one. Like all of those tiny little props that they had to set up in the penthouse, and of course it was filmed in the same apartment building. So,
that helps with some continuity, but you're right. Like the set design in this, like makes the continuity seem like seamless
and the makeup. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were able to really make it seem like, the same actual night, even though it's a couple years later when they were doing this. But, Manuela Velasco's character kind of changes in this movie. She seems like a little bit more of a badass, when she shows up, she's able to like fight people and
not at first. At first she was traumatized and couldn't barely function.
Well, I mean, but later it didn't take her very long to like snap out of it, and then like, I was just like, where did she learn to hold her own so quickly in this same night? But
I don't know. I don't know. Her voice should be hoarse from saying, "Keep la cara."
And everyone else's voice should be hoarse from just completely shouting at each other all the fucking time, which is what the rest of this cast seems to do. It's like during the casting calls, they were just like, just shout for 5 minutes and we'll pick the loudest.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously following the success of Rec, Jaume Balagueró and Paco Plaza signed on for a sequel. And I don't know that this was ever planned to have a sequel, right? It was just kind of one-off. So it's just like when that kind of thing happens and you're not like already inspired to do something, this sort of thing can happen, I think. Anyway, principal photography began in November and wrapped in December of 2008, shooting for 6 weeks in Barcelona. Now, the directors were really keen on giving the film an additional vibe of the first-person shooter video game, where the audience feels personally drawn into the action on screen. For that reason, the barrel of the gun is in the foreground of a lot of those shots. And around this time, I want to say like right around when Rec was coming out, the original Fear video game had come out, and then Fear 2 was released around the same time as this one. And those were huge, like movie-like cinematic first-person shooter games that were horror-based, right? And so I can see that. And there was a couple other first-person movies that came out around this time-ish, right? There was a first-person, like I think it was called Shooter, came out, and then Doom, the movie Doom with Carl Urban and The Rock had come out, and there was a first-person part of that, right? And so there was a lot of kind of experimentation. I think Doom was probably, Doom and Shooter did it way better, especially Shooter since the entire thing is basically a oneer. Now, like, I think that they were, okay, we can add that piece to it. I think that's inevitable, right? Because you're doing a found footage film, right? And so it's all going to be POV to a certain extent, right? But I don't know. Before I get into like picking this thing apart, maybe we should like work our way through the movie a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So this movie is in really, really like 4 distinct acts to me. Usually things are a little more flowy than that, but like it is so staccato as far as like we're here and we're there, we're here, we're there. You know what I mean? That it does make the pacing of the movie a little bit like it really does, especially in thirds, right? But I've split it into 4 anyway.
Yeah, it almost feels like there should be a curtain in between some of these things and then like a little intermission and you come back for the next portion, right? And you would think that something that's found footage and really like POV style would flow a little bit better, but you're right. There's some jarring moments when it switches from like act to act.
Yes, and mostly because of perspective shift, right? And which I still don't agree with. So we start off with the SWAT team entering, right? And we're taking off like right as the first movie ended, right? Like in the same moments. And so like, first of all, there's a lot of muppety, angry SWAT guys that just can't deal with the situation. And I hate that in movies, right? It's like these people are actually like cool as cucumbers, generally speaking. I mean, it's fun to throw in a Bill Paxton, here and there, and that'll come up again, to make people a little bit more emotional and be kind of like the audience a little bit, when you're dealing with like these professionals. But these guys just, outside of just wearing the suits, like none of them seemed like they knew what they were doing.
No, I mean, and it's okay. Like if you have a SWAT team that's sort of like seemingly prepared and seemingly cool and level-headed, get into a situation that they're not prepared for, right? But like when we immediately meet these people, they don't seem like they're prepared to go into any dangerous situation at all, And so like, there's nothing to really ramp up as far as like their own tension because they already seem like half-cocked.
Yeah.
So,
And for Act 2, which is really just part of the first, which is just like this movie is in thirds, right? Which is like the beginning, the teenagers, the end.
Yes.
Right. And so the beginning and the end are with our main group of SWAT and, of course, the father doctor, the priest. You know, and once like they get into the building, it just goes into full blown like exposition mode, which did not need to happen. And I just felt like it was insane. Like they're just talking about the plot for like 20 minutes, like in that penthouse and like working their way through this building. There's a few like zombie cameos, you know, one in particular with the creepy kiddos. Like they do a quick cut of like a kid, you know, crawling on the ceiling backwards. And it really, really works intercut to make it look like it's seamless. And there's quite a few ambitious things they try technically in this movie that work really, really well, which leads us to some, you know, conflicting feelings later on when we discuss our ratings.
that's true. I mean, there are some scary moments, especially in the first parts of this movie, when they're sort of like giving us a little bit more of what's encased inside that penthouse, right? Because in the original movie, we're only given like the crazy setup. You walk in and like clearly someone is obsessed. And
I love how that fucking that penthouse is pitch black, and then they go into the ducts, and it's like, damn, you can clearly see the children coming at you at the end of the duct.
well, I mean, they had to give you that monster moment or whatever, but
Well, it could have been like Alien or something, where like he flicks the lighter, and there's like all these little kiddo faces staring at him or something, you know?
well, hell yeah, that would have been scarier. But I mean, like this penthouse is seemingly like endless and is much larger than I had envisioned. But there's lots of different places they could go, and there's lots of secrets to be found within it. So it's very, very first-person shooter kind of video game, right? Where you have to explore the area that you're in and like find the right thing. Like it all seems to fit in that kind of like video game-esque narrative style.
Yeah.
But there is a shit ton of exposition because I don't know, like at the end of Rec, we're sort of like given the opportunity to think that this could be a possession and not just an infection based on what they find in the penthouse. And they sort of leave it at that. But the rest of this movie follows a father doctor, and it becomes way more about possession and less about infection. It's like religious science. And so they have to talk about it a lot throughout this movie.
Yeah. And there's like the thing moment with the blood
where they put something hot on it. Oh no, he goes and says some sort of religious chanting over it and the blood reacts.
Yeah. And then of course the guy's holding the vial right next to it. So it goes to, so they lose the fucking blood. Really like, yeah. Chances are if something is frustrating for our main characters,
yes,
it's going to be frustrating for the audience.
I would agree with that. In fact, I generally do. So, however, unlike the rest of our cast members, I'm not like shouting at each other through the screen or whatever. But I don't know. That was just another example of someone being able to shout at another character. Like, oh my God, the blood.
Yeah.
Dios mío, the sangre.
And I don't know if this is like studio meddling or whatever, but then we get our Act 3, which is the teenagers, which is like a huge segue in the middle of the action.
Yeah, and I don't understand why. I mean, I realize why we have them because it adds some moments later on, but
it also breaks immersion, right? Because it's not found footage anymore. Someone has taken this and curated it and edited it together.
Yep.
Right. And I don't like that.
Well, they need to say that, right? Like this is why when you watch a movie like Cloverfield, they say like this has been edited together based on what we found.
Intercuts and like title cards and stuff.
Yeah. And this one, they're just like, okay, let's switch to someone else's camcorder, which magically has been edited in by someone, an outside force. But,
yeah.
I mean, you don't always have to follow the rules when it comes to, you know, the style of movie you're making. But at the very least, they hold true to that style of filmmaking, found footage. They just switch to a different voice.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's why I say, like, I wonder if it's the studio that was like, well, the people that are going to see this movie that made it such a success are those teenagers, right? And we need them. We need we need them in the movie.
We need the demographic.
Right. Maybe that was them. I don't know. But I feel like we could have really gone without that. It does add some new blood kind of per se, more people to turn into zombies besides the SWAT team. You know, we do get a big swing and a miss maybe for long runners. that end up with some of these teenage actors disappearing for a few minutes and then reappearing with their makeup and sclera contacts, because they're zombies now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting that they were able to do, but it was kind of transparent because they do like disappear off the screen in the oneer. And it's like, you don't have to do them as a oneer. You have a million other ways that you've cut before without having to do that.
And they cut a lot in this one, like way more than the original. I feel like cameras stop recording or they start recording based on when they tell them to. Like it's all very choreographed in that way.
It's just like I was able to watch the first movie with my normal critical eye and be blown away. And I was able to watch this movie and everything seemed kind of artificial, like kind of try hard.
It's not very often that I'll watch a movie and think to myself during the process, like what I would have done differently.
Yeah.
But this one I did. And I was like, I don't know that I would make that particular choice.
Because I almost just now apologized for like looking at this from like a filmmaker or like a critical perspective. And I'm like, wait, no, I'm watching it with the same eyes I watched the first one.
Yeah. You're the same person.
It's like seamless, with the first one, right? It's not try hard. It just seemed so natural versus this one did not seem as much. It seemed like over scripted, like overproduced, over technical, over ambitious. I like ambition though, right? Famously. So then we get up to our wrap up and the twist, right? With Act 4. I thought the reality warping in darkness was a neat touch. Like every time they turn off the lights and they look through the viewfinder, they see something different. Like, oh, there's a hidden door there. Like really, it's really high concept and kind of like forced, but I liked the idea and I thought they executed it well.
I mean, I thought that it was executed well just based on visuals, right? But it's just the concept of it that I didn't care for. You know what I mean? Like they were talking about all this possession stuff from the perspective of like religious science, right? We need a blood sample. We have to find a cure, yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, but if we use the infrared, biblical, magical things start to happen.
It doesn't make sense. Like it's cool technical thing to do in the film, but it doesn't make sense. Like who built the door? It's not satanic or anything. And, there's like a big coffin in water or something for this thing. It's like, did this thing build it? Like, but that room was already there. So it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that like, so we're supposed to believe that the demon can hide this through darkness.
If it was some sort of like fucking, Constantine, like hellscape or something in the darkness that you could see different things going on, that's kind of different. I don't know. It just didn't work.
It would have worked better to me if it was more
cool.
like a secret passage kind of thing that just existed anyway.
Yeah.
Or
they pulled the right book or something,
Yeah.
Demonology.
That and from a real world sense, but like I just could not get behind all the like biblical magic that was happening and like the justification of it coming from like Bible quotes and things. And I'm like, okay, sure, Jan. And then like there's just things that are there, like a giant tub of like gross ass water and stuff. And I'm like, okay, so it's hidden. And they can't touch it either because they were all up in that room and no one bumped into the giant tub, So I don't know. It's just a really, really weird kind of moment and way to wrap up this movie.
I really understand it. Yeah, it is weird. So I don't know. This movie is really confusing to me. Like from one perspective, they were really ambitious with what they tried and partially succeeded to do, but it's almost like they tried to do too much with the FPS style coupled with the big oneers and the multiple perspectives. It also felt really forced and artificial, like I said. Almost like they had these big ideas, but not really a solid script. It doesn't really feel like these actors are, having to make... It does really feel like these actors are having to make up their own dialogue as they go along sometimes, which makes like emotional beats good out of whack in some cases, like the big anger beats. Mm-hmm. I remember improv classes. I don't know if you've been in theater and there's improv classes. All the men in those scenes, especially like if they're, newer, not established actors or whatever, they always go to fight scenes. They always go to anger, right? Because it's the easiest thing to do out of the gate when you don't have any imagination. And it just feels like that's what they did because these aren't legitimate actors except for the father doctor.
Well, that, and then I feel like if they're just given a basic character, right? Because we talked in the original one that people were not given the script. They didn't know what was going to be happening with their characters. And we talked about how that'd be an interesting way to act, right? And to direct. But if they did the same thing in this, they basically just told these people, hey, you're a SWAT guy, and so they're like, oh, SWAT guys have guns. They're probably angry.
It feels like they were told to say some things and do some things, but like they doubled down on the cinema verite. Like, we're just going to give you some minor direction, and that really worked in the first film, so we're going to double down on that. Versus, I really do feel like it was a little bit more carefully orchestrated and intentional in the first film. and they were more careful. And this one, it felt like they were much more interested in the technical feats that they were able to do as filmmakers than they were in the actual story or characterization of these people that we're watching.
Well, that's true. And I think in the original, like, we were able to sort of get to know our cast of characters a little bit, you know, through the use of like the reporter and interviews and things like that. And it gave them a real reason to be in that apartment.
Well, all of a sudden we have every single character in that had a different problem that you can instantly empathize with. Oh, my husband's out getting medicine for my sick daughter. That's a huge storytelling moment. One sentence gives you a lot of picture of that situation. Right? I was like, well, that's like, okay, we know that the mother's probably desperate. The kiddo is probably sad. Like, a lot of empathy is just baked into that one sentence, right? Just a lot of heavy lifting. No one really has that sort of story or perspective here. And when they do, they're kind of throwaway characters. The father with the medicine.
Yep.
He could have easily been like the main character here.
Yeah. And could have. I mean, they could have taken this movie in many, many different directions than what they did from a character standpoint, right? And I think that is the biggest difference between these two movies, is that we're given characters in the sequel that I could give two shits about, really.
Yeah.
And so, like, as they're starting to die, I'm like, good, well, maybe the movie will get quieter now, because honestly, all the shouting was obnoxious.
Really obnoxious, actually.
And not fun. And I don't like it when people,
and it would just
fighting
continue and continue and it was just like, stop it, just figure it out. Fuck.
Jesus Christ, you're stuck in there. There are zombies and possessions, and you're just gonna have.
There was a shit ton of shouting in the first one, but it was all like kind of empathetic and understandable, you know.
Yeah, or at the very least, like trying to get someone to safety. It was very directed safety shouting.
Also, there's lots of beats in this movie where it reminds me of Aliens. So they were trying to do like they're on the APC unit on the way to down to the planet, you know, or in this case to the apartment building.
Yeah,
bumping their camera, you know, to try and get the camera to work, you know. You know, and it's just like, okay, well, you could have had the father coming back in, you know, as like, you know, someone. You could have like a Carol Ann characters, and not Carol Ann, Newt characters in there. I really wanted like maybe Angela Vidal or whatever to have escaped, and then somehow convince her to turn right back around and like guide them through the situation.
Right.
And that would have been like an interesting like Ripley stuff. We'd already connected with that character to, you know, introduce her in the last 20 minutes of this film. And then make her actually evil and not someone that we've already established empathy with, I think was a mistake. They should have brought her back from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think that she should have been like the main part of this particular movie.
They could have Ripley'd the shit out of this,
yep.
You know, and been like, you know, really transparent about it, and it would have been a better film.
No, I agree. And I feel like the moments that we get to see Angela sort of become like a badass, even though like technically she's possessed and that's why, like, I would rather see her go Ripley in that moment too and be like an actual badass.
Like, it's playing out in my head right now. You know, she's sitting in the ambulance, they're cleaning her up, she's explaining what's happening. The father doctor goes to her and was like, I know what's really going on. I know what you know what's really going on. Would you please come in? You know, this is a matter of like life and death for the world, basically.
Yep.
You know, convinces her, and then the SWAT team, you'll have protection. You know,
it's a much bigger.
It just writes it fucking
movie.
self. You know,
it does.
Fucking bring in Paul Reiser. I'm sure he speaks Spanish.
Well, we have some questions. Is Rec 2 a horror movie?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Were you scared while watching Rec 2?
No, not really.
No, I jumped several times.
I was too annoyed.
I was annoyed, but there was, just like the original, I could see a jump scare coming from like, you know, kilometers away.
Me too.
And I still jumped at it.
I didn't.
So I did like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, but I'm susceptible to that shit.
Yeah.
Out of 5 stars, what did you rate Rec 2?
You know, originally I rated it a 3 because I was just so conflicted. I loved the ambition of it from a technical standpoint and, you know, makeup and editing and everything else. And then I was just like, you know, no, it can be middle of the road. There's like, you know, a couple of beats that are like 5-star moments, 4-star moments, you know, and then like the rest of it's just shit, you know, so I have to meet in the middle. It's like 2.5.
Yeah. I also started with 3 stars and I was just like, that seems like a good solid rating for this movie because of the things that you just said. And also like I did jump in moments, right? And I was really impressed by the continuity of it all. And
also whenever I see an aggregate at like 60-something%, you know, and an audience score that kind of mirrors that, I do feel that like peer pressure to like kind of align to that. And I'm just like, no, actually, I did not really enjoy this movie. I just could not wait for this to be over.
Yep. And so I've been thinking about it after we watched it, and I have also decided to downgrade my score from 3 to 2.5 because I didn't like the movie. And I'm like, why am I rating something higher just because I like the technical aspects of it or all that when I didn't enjoy the film and I actively wouldn't watch it again. And then when thinking about the plot, like I really enjoyed Wreck for being a really good infection zombie movie. And what I didn't enjoy about the sequel is all of the religion and possession that they brought in. I was like, it just doesn't make it as fun for me because, a possessed person to me is not a zombie and shouldn't act like one. I don't know. Finally, who's the hottest guy in Wreck 2?
Literally no one, right?
Yes.
Like even the SWAT guys who you would expect to be like someone, at least one guy that's hot, throw in the Colin Farrell or something, from the movie SWAT. And no, we're given I don't know, used car salesmen that are just with SWAT uniforms on with the double chins and everything else. And I'm just like, maybe that's more realistic. I don't know, but I just give me something to look at.
So
that sounds so bad.
I went onto IMDb, as one does, and it was because I didn't know anyone's fucking name from this movie. No one ever says any character names. And there's one main SWAT guy who is doing the bulk of the recording, right? It's following his POV that we really never get to see on screen at all. And his photo on IMDb, he's fucking hot.
Yeah.
So
we see his reflection in the first movie because one of my fun facts is coming up.
Okay. So when I was looking at that, I was like, why would they not show this man's face? Why wouldn't they put the camera on one of the schlubby, ugly SWAT guys?
Because he can't act. I don't know.
Who cares? Looks good. But anyway, nobody is my choice. There's just no one hot in this movie.
Yeah.
What are these fun facts, though?
I have two.
Okay.
I don't even have fun there. So the constant presence of helicopters buzzing overhead was created entirely by the sound and light teams. The production couldn't afford any real helicopters. Oh. And why would you do that anyway?
I mean, if they're recording in the city, I'm sure a helicopter will go by at some point.
Yeah. We're going to wait for the next helicopter, guys. Secondly, Pablo Rosso, the camera from the original Wreck, who she goes, Pablo, right? Returns this time as a SWAT member named Rosso.
Oh. Pablo and Rosso?
Yeah, because that's his actual name.
Well, Pablo Rosso. Sorry, I kept thinking about Pablo at this point. Well, Pablo, you're the hottest guy in Wreck 2.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. Well, those were fun. Well, I think that just about wraps up our derp dive into Wreck 2. As always, though, we want to know what you think about this movie and our conversation about it. Did we miss the mark? Do you guys really enjoy this sequel? You can find us on social media to let us know at The Film Flamers on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, all the places.
You can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com or call our hotline at 972
666
7733.
Slip me that slimy worm. Comment.
And with that, I got nothing to add to that. Join us for Patreon when we're covering Quarantine.
That's right.
Which is going to be better than this one.
The American remake of Wreck.
And I think next year we're maybe going to be doing Wreck 3 and 4 and then Quarantine 2.
Yeah, I need to see if this film series redeems itself from this particular sequel. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
And mayhaps part of the problem is that we watched them two back to back, and people are remembering Wreck differently or something when they saw the sequel.
And we just needed some
gave this one too much more credit. I don't know. Anyway, this kind of wraps up our deep and derp dives for the month.
That's right. We hope you enjoyed our zombie content. And we have more content coming out for you in April, guys, including all of our thoughts on the movies we see at the Overlook Film Festival.
That's right. So I can't wait.
Until then, Chris, I need to go off, get lots of sleep so we can see all those movies and have some sweet dreams. It's movies like Wreck 2 that really make me think that we could just go out and film something. And
for real.
Like we could go do it right now.
Right now.
That's all the preparation we need.
Yeah.
Just let's go do it.
Just prep and preparation.
Our neighbors scream. We'll cast them.
Powder, wigs, and lube.
Done.
Prep and preparation.
The Austin of it all.